Thank you very much. A warm welcome to everybody and a good morning to you. My name is Mario and I have the pleasure to talk to you about the role of blockchain technology in the field of logistics. As it has been said, I'm working at this university and I'm working at the Institute for Transportation and Logistics Management. So I'm not a technology expert, I'm a logistics and supply chain person, but in my research, I try to find out how information systems and new technologies can help companies to have more efficient, more customer-oriented, more effective, and also more sustainable supply chain and logistics processes. And I would like to reflect on the role of blockchain within logistics and would like to find out together with you whether or not it has an impact at all. This is why I'd like to start my talk by raising the question whether the logistics industry should care about blockchain or whether it's just another technology trend amongst a lot of other developments that this industry is currently facing. I'll then try to point out some specific areas of application where we do actually see projects and where we see that blockchain can help us to improve our processes or to do things differently. And in the end, I will at least try to tell you where logistics firms should start their blockchain endeavors and probably the hardest question to ask, when they should start being interested in blockchain, when they should start making their own projects, when they should start investing into this technology, if at all. Well, I don't know how familiar you are with the logistics industry, but believe me when I say that change is one of the constants in our field. The logistics industry has changed a lot over the last couple of decades. A couple of years ago, logistics used to be a very boring and very unsexy field. And probably for most of you, it still is. And in the 60s, for example, logistics was seen as a necessary evil by most companies. They thought of logistics as we have to do it to move around boxes and to serve our customers, but it was not a core business function. In the 70s and 80s, more and more firms started to find out that logistics actually is a cost factor, and then they identified, well, if we improve our logistics processes, we might bring down our costs, and this could improve our overall business. In the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, firms started to think strategically about logistics. They started to improve and manage and optimize flows across different functions within their companies. And in the 2000s and late 90s, they started to manage and optimize boundary-spanning logistics processes by also thinking about their suppliers and their customers. So it was a more holistic job of managing the supply chain. And now, logistics managers face a new problem. They face disruption by technology. But blockchain is not their only problem. When we look at the logistics industry, we see that a lot of different developments and trends are dramatically affecting how business is done in our industry. And the German logistics service provider DHL tried to identify and cluster all these different trends and technologies. And believe me, this chart looks way more complicated than it is. I'll try to explain it to you briefly. They first distinguish between so-called business and social trends and technology-driven trends. You can see that technology-driven trends like 3D printing, self-driving vehicles, blockchain, and augmented reality on the right-hand side, and things like the sharing economy, servitization, green energy logistics, and others on the left-hand side. They also try to differentiate between trends and developments with a high impact, with disruptive character. They're on top of this chart, and at the lower end you will find technologies which are not less important, but they have a more incremental effect on how business is done in the logistics sector. And in the center you will find technologies and trends which are transforming our field in the near future, and on the outer parts, technologies that become relevant in later phases. And here they have this cut with more than 5 years. And you can see here that DHL says blockchain is a technology of medium disruptive character. It will be important in more than 5 years, and it will have an impact on our field. However, when I talk to practitioners and people who are working in this industry, a lot of them say, well, we are intrigued by this fancy new projects. We, of course, try to study them a little bit, but we are not really interested in investing money into into blockchain applications in the logistics sector, and we are actually not believing that it will have a disruptive effect on the way we do business right now, because in the 90s, people have told us that RFID will transform the way we do business. In the early 2000s, they said that other technologies will have a dramatic impact, and some of these companies, at least they say and believe, that they're still working like in the 80s or 90s. And even outside the logistics sector, there is a lot of skepticism. For example, the CEO of Magical once said that blockchain technology is just a venture capitalist hype buzzword, which still has to demonstrate its potential outside the world of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies and Ethereum. I suppose that most of you would disagree with this statement. However, when we look at the numbers, for example, numbers provided by the technology research firm Gartner, we see that on a global scale, when we look at actual company implementations, only a fraction of companies actually employed blockchain already. And only a handful of companies says, well, we are investigating projects and we are thinking about deploying blockchain technology in our business environment. And the large portion of these firms said, we don't think about blockchain at all, or they say, well, we have it on the radar, but we have no action planned in the next couple of months or years. Well, I do believe that this will change. However, it also helps us to understand that the business world might lag a little bit behind the technology enthusiasts, which maybe some of you are part of here in this room. So do I think that blockchain is irrelevant for logistics? No, I don't. I think that blockchain has a lot of application potential. And we actually see various areas where this technology can help us to improve or redesign our business processes and the way we do business. This is just a small selection of potential fields where we think that blockchain and distributed ledger technologies can make a difference. For example, blockchain will help us or can help us to make supply chains more transparent, to find out what is going on in our supply chains in order to be able to act on time and in the right way. It will help us to coordinate different actors along value chains which are usually very fragmented. So supply chains on a global scale are a very fragmented environment. We have a lot of different companies doing business with each other, and sometimes coordination is quite a challenge. So technology can help us to align these actors and to do things faster, better, and more customer-oriented. Of course, we don't start from scratch. Most firms have their information systems in place, and they often say, we don't want to substitute all of our existing IT with blockchain-based solutions. But blockchain might also play a role in linking existing services. It might be a coordination layer for legacy systems. And this is something a lot of supply chain companies are currently trying to investigate. We, of course, have automated processes, smart contracts that could be employed. We try to manage documents in a digital way. I will show you some examples later. We try to create more decentralized marketplaces because logistics always needs an intermediary as a coordinator, and also marketplaces are usually coordinated and steered and controlled by certain central authorities. and it might help us to build more decentralized systems. It is a huge topic in supply chain finance and in the insurance industry. And when I say supply chain finance, I do not mean just in the area of cryptocurrencies or just in the area of traditional cryptocurrencies. We've heard a lot of talks about local currencies and coins today in the morning. And this can also be applied in the logistics sector. For example, think about a company like Volkswagen who has its own currency. And they use their own currency within their supply chain. Maybe they pay their suppliers using their own Volkswagen coin. And with this coin, a supplier can only pay sub-suppliers. So they can try to use such things in order to prevent fraud, to prevent that money is used for things not intended, and that they have more also financial transparency within their networks. One of the most interesting parts probably is that within supply chains we can use blockchain for nudging and behavioral change. What blockchain does, it gives us a powerful tool to redesign incentive systems within our supply chain. And it might help us that companies can be nudged to do things in a more sustainable way. And this tool might be more powerful than existing things that we have. Let me just briefly tell you about some examples. A lot of companies are currently investigating how food supply chains can be made more efficient by applying the blockchain technology. Every year, 1 in 10 people get sick because of food contamination. Hundreds of thousands of people die because of food poisoning and other related aspects. And a lot of startups and also large companies now try to use the blockchain technology in things like food supply chains or pharmaceutical supply chains in order to find out whether or not everything what is in the product should be in the product, and whether or not there have been any problems along the supply chain. However, we see a lot of solutions where we still have manual work and where we might have to add data by humans, and so we sometimes have points of failure which are part of our new blockchain solutions. Because just because something is written on a blockchain in a tracking and tracing system, it doesn't necessarily mean, as you know, that this information is actually correct, and it should be correct when you want to act on this information appropriately. IBM and the Port of Rotterdam and other large supply chain companies are trying to improve global business processes in logistics by aligning all the actors along the value chain. They try to have new blockchain solutions in place which help companies to manage their supply chains from the beginning, from the sender until the final customer. And they also try to include customs authorities and other companies which have a stake in this process to provide them with accurate information and to give them the opportunity to act on any unexpected events. In transportation, lots of things can go wrong. In global transportation, we have a lot of insurance issues, and we do have a couple of companies who already deployed commercial systems for managing insurance claims on the blockchain. Because information is written on the blockchain about this transportation, about the characteristics of this transportation, of the planned transport, about live events, and this helps insurance companies to have a better picture of the entire supply chain. It helps them to make customer-tailored insurance products, and for the insured companies, in case of any emergency or when something happens, this can help them to execute claims management in an automatic way and can actually save a lot of time and money. And like I've said before, blockchain might help us to rebuild incentive systems within our supply chain. It might help us to use purpose-driven tokens to design supply chains in a way that good decisions or decisions that we want our actors in the value chain to make are in some way rewarded. And we can, of course, use this to reward sustainable behavior, but we can also use this to reward any other kind of behavior that our supply chain partners should show. When we look at the different stages of development, we will definitely not see the blockchain to transform our entire industry within just a couple of months or with a couple of projects. We currently see a lot of single use cases with low levels of novelty and low degrees of coordination efforts needed. But in the future, we are sure that blockchain will help us to dramatically transform our industry. But this will not be a blockchain-only topic. This will not be a blockchain-only achievement. We believe that these transformative projects will become reality because of a convergence of blockchain technology, the Internet of Things, and IoT, and also other technologies in this sector. So it's not a blockchain-only game changer here. One concluding remark regarding timing. A lot of companies in our field currently really struggle because they don't know when they should invest into this new technology. And this is actually a very hard decision. And the problem is that most of the projects are in very early phases, and these very early innovation phases are characterized by high degrees of product innovation and low degrees of process innovation, which means we have a lot of competing a lot of competing coins and solutions on the market, which makes it very hard for logistics firms to say we would like to invest in this one technology, because there is the risk that their investment is obsolete in a couple of years. And at least carriers and logistics service providers, they usually don't have the money to invest in technologies which might be useless in a couple of years. So most of these firms have to wait until standards emerge, until so-called dominant designs emerge on the market, because then their costs go down. And now one of the hardest parts for these companies is that they, on the one hand, they need to make investments, they need to think about these technologies. However, they really can't act in a purposeful way. And what I would tell them, and this is not only true for the logistics sector, but also for other industries as well. One last sentence, they have to wait and have to build capabilities until the market is ready. And this is like surfers are surfing, because surfers can't start paddling when the wave is near them. They have to start paddling when the wave is still at the horizon and when they don't actually know whether or not it will be a game changer or their great wave they are waiting for. Thank you.
Thank you.